On today's episode of the Unveil podcast, we have a very special guest. She is our friend, she's our colleague, she is Megan Thoma. Megan is a certified master coach helping women to connect to their authentic power, break up with toxic patterns, and intentionally create deeper, more meaningful relationships. And we dig into all of that on today's podcasts. We discuss with Megan what toxic relationships actually mean. We go into the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial and understand what a coach is seeing when we're watching this play out in front of our very eyes. We also talk about Megan's own personal journey, digging into her past and her present to understand her evolution in the world of dating. More than this, we discuss Megan's fabulous course launching May 15th. Her End Toxic Dating course is a 3-week course with a 3-step process, calls with her, opportunities for coaching, and so much more. Enjoy this episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Brace Harris.
And my name is Victoria Fenton.
And we are
Unveil.
Beautiful. Today is an exciting day for the Unveil team. We are not alone today. You don't have to listen to just mine and Victoria's droning on as we sometimes do. We have a beautiful, lovely guest in the studio with us today. Megan Thoma, thank you so much for being with us. We are so excited. Victoria, would you like to introduce
our lovely friend?
Lovely guest, yes.
So listeners of the podcast who listen to every episode will know that I mentioned Megan last week because she is giving me life at the moment on her socials. She's not just a social media superstar, although we are going to talk about that first. But Megan is a friend of ours. She trained with us and she's currently part of Elementum Coaching Institute. She's a super duper coach. We will have introduced her in the introductions, but Megan, welcome to Unveil.
So excited to be here. So excited, y'all. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You are our first ever guest.
So excited. I'm honored. Yes.
And I just want to set this up because I want to talk about the main reason kind of why we mentioned you. And literally every story you put on at the moment, Megan is covering, literally she's like a correspondent for the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
I'm having a little bit of fun. Yes.
Why are you so into this? Help us understand where your interest is. What are you seeing? Like, give us the background.
Yes. So this case in particular, I just find it so fascinating because what really sticks out to me is the fact that Johnny Depp, okay, mega superstar, right? And it just goes to show us no matter how much money you have, no matter how adored you are, no matter how well known you are, or private islands that you have as he does, we all can fall prey to these kinds of relationships. It doesn't matter your status. None of that matters. We all have our wounding and we're all walking around carrying that unless we decide to look at it. So I just find it fascinating. Yeah.
And so Megan, as you will now know, is a relationships expert. It's her niche. It's what she does. And we're going to get into that later. But I want you to give us, the Unveil listeners and myself and Brace, an insight into what you're seeing in this relationship. What are the dynamics at play? How do you know they're at play? What are you seeing when you watch this trial take place? And give us an insight into the way a coach is looking at this kind of trial as it plays out.
Yes, so good. So this case in particular is really fascinating because let me just say from the get-go, we haven't heard Amber Heard's side yet, his ex-wife. So I'm typically, if you follow me on social media or see any of my stuff, you will see I'm such an empowering person to women. I'm all about women's empowerment and speaking their voice and telling their truth. And this case is so interesting because it shows the other side of just because you are a woman or in a woman's body or identify as female, it doesn't mean that that it's just the men that are at fault, or it's just the men that are the narcissist or the abuser or the attacker. So what I'm seeing in this case, and I also have a fascination studying body language. I find all of that fascinating, is a woman, Amber Heard, who is very, very hurt, a very hurt person, and is is taking out a lot of her own shame and anger and wrath onto Johnny Depp and sort of like projecting all of her stuff and making him the bad guy. I think she almost, and I'm not an expert on this case, obviously, but what it looks like is she said he was an abuser, and now it's like she put it out there and she's gone so far. And I don't think she ever thought he was going to sue her for defamation. And now she's just in it. She's stuck. So, and now we're seeing it play out on live TV.
And it's interesting because when you share that, what I'm hearing is like, we tend to think of the archetypical feminine and then the archetypical masculine. And we were joking before we came on, and we can swear on this podcast, Megan. And
thank God.
Yeah. And I basically said to you guys, it's like, it's not all just going to be men are dicks, because it's very easy for female empowerment coaches to step into that men bashing territory. And I love that you're Team Johnny, hashtag Team Johnny, currently, obviously, because it's so easy for us as these women coming out of this powerful movement of female, basically empowerment, as we've been saying, and just get into anti-men territory. And as I'm sure everyone will know who listens to my podcasts with Brace, like, I'm very pro good men. And it's exactly the phrase you said earlier. And I don't know that we'd characterize Johnny Depp as a good man, but like, this is relationships. Like, there's not just one person at fault, right?
Right. 100%. And I'm also of the belief that no one human is toxic. I'm not saying Amber's toxic or Johnny's toxic, but their ways of relating are toxic. It's like her wounding and his wounding is like gas and fire. And I feel like those of us that are so enthralled by this case probably have been through something similar or know someone that's gone through something similar. And there's almost this part of us, or I can speak for myself, there's this part of me that's like, yes, like the bad guy's got to go down, right? Because we've been hurt in the same way, or been affected in some way by toxic ways of relating to somebody. So yeah.
And is that what took you into this kind of niche in the first place, Meg? Is that like your kind of, why don't you tell our listeners why you are the expert in what you call toxic dating?
Oh, how much time do we have on this podcast?
Because we can go, but like, if you want to give us your life story, we're here for it.
I'll spare you the details, but at least everybody's sitting down. Hopefully, listening to this podcast, you're driving or sitting down, because here's my story. No, but this is exactly why I did get into this particular niche. I was always fascinated with relationships growing up, and I decided to go into coaching because I was technically coaching, like probably most of us here, just not getting paid for it, right? I did it with my friends that were married, that were in and out of relationships. And I just found it fascinating. So I was like, oh, there's a profession for this. I don't have to go to like become a counselor or psychologist for years and years. So anyhow, I decided to go into coaching, and I was engaged briefly in 2018. No, I got engaged in 2017. I called it off a few months later in 2018. And it was this pivotal point in my life, this toxic relationship. And it wasn't my first one. It was my second, but it was my big one, that really woke me up into the reasons why I was picking people that I was picking, or why I stayed in a relationship like that. Because the women that I work with, it's such a point of shame being in one of these relationships. They can't figure out why they would be in a situation like that or attract somebody in like that. That was my story. I was like, I don't get it. I've got great friends. I've got a great family. My parents are still together. I'm independent, all these things that I was like putting myself on this pedestal. I'm like, why, how could I be in a situation like this? But I mean, it's not until we uncover those wounds and really look at what's going on inside that we can ever get out of a situation like that. And it took me a minute. It took me a minute to really leave that relationship. It's like life and death. So I'll share this really quick because it was such an impactful moment that I had with my coach. My first coach that I worked with, we were together one-on-one for 8 months. And he said something to me that I'll never forget, which was, it's almost like you're trying to recreate your family. And I was like, well, yeah, because my parents are still together and I want a family and I want kids and a healthy marriage. I said, right. But it's almost like you're trying to recreate your family. And by doing that, you never have to grow up. You get to be a kid forever. Because I was subconsciously and secretly, even though I had all this like independent hat on, I was wanting the man to come in and take care of me so that I felt safe enough to actually go full-time coaching or to go all into my dreams. Because this is when I was still working 9 to 5. So that was such a wake-up call to me. I was like, wow, it's really time for me to individuate from family and step into my own sovereign being as a woman. So
is that a pattern you see a lot? And do you feel like that is common with women who get into relationships? They're trying to find a safety or something like that?
Absolutely. So much of being in a toxic relationship or fear of leaving the toxic relationship has to do with this lack of safety and security within their body and within their mind. So yeah, that's a really important point. But it's interesting. It's like, there's not one archetype or category of person that means you're going to succumb to a toxic relationship. I have clients who are not close with their family, have no family, don't have close friends, that get in toxic relationships. I have other people that were similar to me where I had amazing friends. I'm close with my family. I didn't grow up with major T trauma and I still got into a toxic relationship. So yeah. None of us are safe from them, unfortunately. Yeah.
And to the extent that you feel happy to go here, I just wonder, so how long have you been kind of being coached yourself through this now, would you say? How long have you been being coached for?
And healing on this particular
topic, yeah.
Yes. I would say over the last 2.5, 3 years, something like that.
Great. Yeah. And so just to give our listeners an understanding of how long some of this stuff takes, because we're very into painting the real picture at Unveil. It's like, would you say that you are like completely free of the shame of that stuff? Or do you have some lingering after effects? Where are you at personally?
It's a beautiful question. And I know the minute that we say we're done or that we feel like healed or complete, that's not always the case. However, when I got the idea for the End Toxic Dating course that I do, it was because I had reached this moment in my healing where I felt that I had finally broken the spell or the pattern, if you will, of toxic dating. Because even after I ended that relationship and took a big break from dating, and then I got back into the dating scene, like one of the first men that I went on a date with, I found out after 2 weeks that he had very large narcissistic tendencies. I'll spare you all the details. And I could have gone, well, there I go again. I did it again. I attracted another narcissist, but I didn't do that because I said, wow, it took me 2 weeks versus 2 years to get out, right? Like I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. And after that, again, I don't believe the universe tests us, but it was this moment of like, I was like, God, do you hear me? I am done. I'm really done. Like I'm putting my foot down. And ever since then, who knows what could happen, right? I could attract someone horrific tomorrow, but I don't feel that I will. There's a new level of complete and total trust within me. I just don't see it happening. And I feel like it took probably a good 2 years to be there. Yeah. And it's such a powerful testimony because we're all in business. We're going to talk in more detail about your course in a bit, we do short courses because nobody wants to hear that it takes 2 years. Right. But it takes long. It takes a long time. Like I'm very open about my journey on this podcast and how, I'm 20 years into my coaching world and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm still working on it. You still hit precipices of needing to deal with stuff. And I like to really set that kind of atmosphere that you never really fix wounds and stuff like that. You see the pattern clearly enough to make it not a behavior and not something that you pursue and kind of seek out. And I love your 2-week story because it's almost like you invited that in so you could see something about your decision-making now, which is awesome. 100%. Yes. It was very it was empowering for me to do that too, to look and say like, look at what I just did. The old me would have made excuses for him and been like, oh, I need to give him a chance and all those stories that I used to subscribe to. And now it's like, no, I'm so clear on what I want. And I'm so convicted I know I get to have it. There's not a part of me that's like, what I want doesn't exist. I'm asking for too much.
Yeah.
I'm never going to find a man that's this, and this, and this. It's like, of course I am. Of course I am. My favorite thing that not my favorite thing that I say, but I like to say, if I exist, he exists. Like, of course he's out there. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that, we can all tell when somebody's spiritually bypassing. And like, if you're watching this or listening to this, I hope you can really hear what we can hear, like here with Megan. It's like, this is so clear in her nervous system that it's just solid. I wonder if you could give us a little bit of an example of what you mean by this toxic dating, and not necessarily specifics, but like the behaviors that come up. What is toxic? Because I think a big part of this is that women in particular, we don't know what we are allowed to expect. And I think like the dating world at the moment is pretty toxic with the apps and all those kinds of things. I want to bring Brace in a second because he's got a very different experience because he's been with his beautiful wife for a very long time and doesn't have this experience. But I want to ask you like first. So give us a for instance of what toxic looks like. And if you're wondering out there and listening, am I in a toxic relationship? Is this relationship having a negative effect on me? Listen to how Megan talks about toxic relating, because you may be in a toxic relationship and not even know it.
Yes. And there's so many layers to this, right? Like there's extreme ends of the spectrum, and then there's like places in between and on the lower end. And I'd love to talk about dating apps at some point, because I have a thought around that. So toxic relationship. So a toxic relationship, it's like two people relating in a mutually destructive way. Again, no one person is toxic. I believe there could be an individual who has maybe less healthy dynamics, but often it brings out the less healthy dynamics in the other person, right? So some examples would be something like holding the relationship hostage. It's almost like these consistent ultimatums of like, well, if you don't do this, then I'm going to leave. Or if you don't do what I say, well, then we can't be together. Or what I was told, like, if you don't quit your job, then we need a prenup. Like all these just very interesting, sneaky ways of like holding a relationship hostage and being controlling. The other one is, pretty standard. What I called is like, you're on the roller coaster. It's like extreme highs where there's like crazy great sex or passion, and it's like fireworks, amazing, instantly almost followed by this extreme low where you're fighting, and it's a lot of, it can be screaming and yelling. It doesn't have to be, but just where it's like this, just the constant high to a constant low very quickly. And it's this like cycle, of like always needing to repair and always trying to make it better and always try to fix it. And, one for me that was, I don't know if everyone has gone through this with a toxic relationship, but it really highlighted just how much we were arguing every time we went on vacation. Okay. Vacation, where it's supposed to be a break from the monotony and the whatever. We fought like cats and dogs every single time. So it's like, well, this is interesting. Like it was getting to the point where it's like, we're fighting once a week, at least once a week. And when you start to think to yourself, oh, we made it a whole week without fighting, that's something to probably look at, right?
Yeah.
There's this also, there's all these just kind of sneaky ways of manipulation, I would say too, or controlling aspects. Like I was starting to be told what I couldn't wear, who I couldn't hang out with. You start to have to isolate yourself from people that you love. And I think the moment, there's a difference between having matters between a couple or a partnership where it's like, we want to keep this private. And there's this other side where you are literally having to hide how you're doing or what's going on for you because you're trying to keep the relationship intact. But you have to isolate yourself from other people, because if they knew what was really going on behind closed doors, there'd probably be some concern.
Yeah. It's funny, in the UK we have we have legal terminology around that. It's called coercive control. I don't know quite whether that's got to, and it's so subtle, because what you said right at the start of this recording was you meet in your wounding, and it's like, this isn't about making an enemy of the person who's being manipulative, because if you're playing into that manipulation, it's your insecurities as well that are playing in. And it's so difficult to get out of, because that doesn't involve just yelling and screaming and slamming the door and walking out of the relationship. It involves doing the work on your own wounding so that you don't feel like you have to be in this toxic relationship. And that's hard. 100%. It's hard work.
It's so hard. It's like life and death. And there's, as I'm sure y'all may have talked about before, there's this aspect of, I believe that we attract in, partners, and in so many ways we're trying to get from our partners what we didn't get from our caregivers, right? What we didn't get from growing up. So there's this part of us, I believe, that feels like, why this feels like life and death. If our caregivers are our first example of a relationship and what relationship's supposed to be like, this is what love feels like, this is what safety feels like, being taken care of feels like. Well, then when we grow up and we start getting in romantic partnerships and we're still needing to get the things that we didn't get from our caregivers, and then we get in this toxic dynamic, let's say with our partner, and then we know it's not healthy, we know it's not good, and we need to walk away. Well, a part of us feels like we're walking away from mom, or we're walking away from dad. We're leaving what we wanted so badly. And if we could just get it to work with this person, then it's like all of our needs would subconsciously be met. Or so we think.
And I wonder if that's a part of it as well. I mean, you would have more experience in this specific area than me, but it's like, do you think that the reason that you stay so long and you try to make it work is because almost you're trying to fix your original familial relationships? You're trying to fix that rather than actually the relationship that's directly in front of you?
100%. I think it's both. I think until we do some of this work, it's subconsciously, we're actually trying to heal our wounds from the past. But then present day time, again, there's that crazy passion that's usually there in these kind of dynamics. And normally I think there's one, maybe two, but a very empathetic person in the relationship as well. And so they can see that a person is hurt or wounded, or, what happened to, they're like, I would say things like, well, my partner, he went through so much as a child growing up, so I'm going to forgive and sort of bypass the fact that he's controlling me, yelling at me, throwing things, all that stuff. So I think it's both. There's a part of us that just so badly wants it to work with this person. We tell ourselves all kinds of stories. Like, I don't want to start over again, or nobody's perfect. Right. And there's this, it's like, I can make this work. It's like this personal determination of like, I can do this. When in reality, it shouldn't have to be this, crazy Rubik's cube of trauma that you're trying to solve for somebody and yourself.
Well, Megan, let me ask you, if someone is moving through this and they're like, they understand that something's off, but they don't necessarily know what to do, how to even approach it, what would be your suggestion for their first move into understanding a little bit more about what may be off, either within themselves, within the relationship, fill in the blank? What, in your professional opinion, what would someone's first move be to explore this a little bit further?
That's a great question. I like to tell people that they've got to put on their truth goggles. So as silly or even maybe as uncomfortable as that might be, it's like, put away all the story, put away all the justification or rationalization, put on the truth goggles and tell yourself what is really going on. So let's say that I have a partner who is out drinking every night with his buddies. Okay. And I could say, well, he's having a really hard time at work, or, well, it's okay. Everybody needs a boys' night and a girls' night. Da, 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 da. Okay, great. What's the truth of what's going on? Okay, the truth of what's going on is when he does that, it makes me feel like shit. When he does that, it makes me not trust him because he never calls in and checks in with me. When he does that, it brings up my fear of cheating. Okay, so let's look at that and then is this something that you're willing to even discuss with your partner? Can you tell the truth and talk about what it's bringing up for you? Can your partner hear that? Does that cause a giant explosion, or is it a place for you to go with it? So it's the truth goggles. That's my first thing.
And I just want to double click on that, because Megan didn't say truth goggles and therefore you're going to go and have an all-out argument with your partner because he's gone out drinking. It was truth about yourself, truth about what is this bringing up? What is the pain? What is the suffering underneath your lived experience within this relationship? Okay. So that was a beautiful like insight into kind of like, what do we really need to be honest about?
Exactly. We're so quick to judge and blame the other person. I know I did. I mean, literally, I say this all the time. I said, my testimony was like, if he would just get his shit together, we could be great. We can walk down the aisle and things would be perfect because I don't have trauma. I'm good. Wow. Like, did I have some waking up to do? So, and now it's become so crystal clear and apparent that it really was never about him. So it's never really about the other person. Yes, they can do things that hurt you, of course. And some behavior is, inexcusable. And we're not saying that it's all okay, but this is really about, at what point did you abandon parts of who you were in order to stay in this relationship? What parts of you are you rejecting and minimizing and diminishing so that you can stay in this? And that's was just a huge wake-up call for me.
Yeah. And if you need to just rewind 30 seconds to listen to Megan say that again, please do it. What parts of yourself are you abandoning to stay in this relationship? It's such an important question, because I don't know how you feel, Megan, but I'm very convinced that the human organism is oriented to safety and love and beingness and totality of being in the present moment. And everything that interferes with that and that presence and that ability to be there is us leaving parts of ourselves, repressing part of ourselves. And this is not to point fingers back at yourself and start blaming yourself for this. This is all adaptations and strategies that we develop as survival. And, we're going to play out things in relationships. We really are.
Yes. That's such a deep part of my work too with clients, is getting to the forgiveness aspects of again, why they even got in the relationship, why they stayed so long, why they went back 87 times, just like I did. I mean, I called off my engagement, and I did. And then I got back together with him and tried to make it work. And it was not until it was that final chapter of trying again. It's like going back to the same thing, wanting a different result, thinking that things were different. And thank God I had a coach at that time too, because it was a third party. It wasn't friends or family where I was like hiding things from, where I could really be real. And it was very difficult. So, but I carried a lot of shame about that for a long time, as most people do in these kind of dynamics. And then when I realized that it was just these, parts of me that I was rejecting. Once I integrated those parts again, it's like you're a whole new person.
A complete person.
Yes, exactly.
And what I know, our podcast gets very repetitive. We are a stand for coaches. We do love coaches because we are coaches. We think coaching is invaluable, but absolutely, like, we're not built to do life alone. So we also automatically assume that we need friends and loved ones, but it's like, yes, and we're probably playing out patterns in those relationships. So you do need that neutral third party, the outside ear to just go, actually, you're in the center, in the nexus of this problem, as well as everyone else. And how can we support you? Because as we always say, you're the only one that you can work on. You can't change anyone else. You can't ask anyone else to change. And relationships are difficult. Nobody's given a rule book.
Yes, I know. And isn't that so annoying? I want to be able to, it's like, I just want to change him. God dang it. Why does it have to be this hard? Like, I wish I had that power. I thought I did for a really long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I can do this. I can change it.
Yeah, well, totally. And so Brace, like, just speak to us, because we speak a lot about our friendship, and obviously we're not in an intimate relationship. We are in very close, like, soul ally friendship, but we have our challenges together because of that. And Brace has a beautiful wife who he also has his, like, their challenges. And it's very interesting because I'm single and, you know, getting older. But Brace, how long have you and your wife been together now?
We started dating 13 years ago.
It's just awesome.
Almost 14, awesome. Almost 14 years ago. And it wasn't the smoothest in the beginning because I had my own stuff that I was bringing into the relationship. She also, you know, had stuff that she was bringing into the relationship. And, you know, the key to our success, I like to think, is that we continued to acknowledge what was kind of broken and messed up within ourselves first and foremost. Going back to what Megan was talking about earlier, taking responsibility for what you are bringing to the table of the relationship, and understanding where you need to do your own individual work so that you can be a better partner, not only for the other person, but to yourself, like being responsible for you. So yes. And we've been married 6 years because it took me a while. I drug my feet because of past relationships. Like, I know the toxic relationship scenario very well, Megan, that you were talking about earlier. That was a huge wake-up call for me, but it took, and that's the interesting thing. And also something I wanted to ask you, Megan, in your experience, does it seem like it takes like this catastrophic kind of relationship to wake people up, or is there a way for us, and I'm thinking about our audience here, who's like, do I have to go through hell to get to this promised land? Like, what would be your advice for someone, well, just as just comforting words? Hey, it doesn't have to be this end all be all type of nuclear explosion in your life for you to kind of wake up and see. What are some other things that people can do to start to cultivate this loving relationship with themselves first?
Beautiful question. And yes, everyone can take a deep breath in and exhale out. You do not have to go through this type of like universal smackdown toxic relationship in order to have an awakening to the truth of who you are, your healing, and, you know, the better relationship with yourself. I have plenty of friends that have, you know, met their soulmate or their husband or wife, and they didn't have an experience like I did. It just happened to be my story. Yeah, I think we all go through heartbreak, right? Or maybe a relationship that was harder than most, but I don't think it's, you know, you're not obligated to go through something like this. I signed up somewhere on some soul contract that this is what I was doing. So that's what happened. But, you know, this is why I love coaching too. And even if you're not a coach, and even I almost wish I wasn't a coach so you could really hear this just straight from my heart, but I'm going to just say it anyway. I've been in counseling in and out of my whole life, not just because my family was so pro therapy and counseling. I would call my mother the generational pattern breaker in the family. She really like held the torch and went first. So it's always sort of been passed down to my sister and I to talk about our feelings and all of that. So I've been through therapy, and I went to couples counseling, and I think that counselors and therapists are incredible. I've had some amazing experiences, and everything changed for me when I went and had my own coach. And the reason I think that is because it was definitely a really pivotal point in my life for that. However, it's something that you can come to, I believe, when you're not just looking to fix the problem. Like, it's about expansion. It's about growth. It's about going deep and wide, you know, within your soul and the core of who you are. So any time is the right time, you know? So you don't have to wait for things to go bad before you do some deep work.
And this is why Megan is one of our first guests on the Unveil podcast, because what Megan doesn't truly know is that Unveil and the company that we're building is very much the ethos underneath it, we're designing it to be a bridge between therapy and coaching, because we know that there's almost always big stuff that needs healing underneath the stuff that we think needs working on. So we and our training and our coaches and everyone that we work with and bring into our umbrella is very much, we're doing it with that energy of, we need to have the skills of a therapist and be able to take people into these deep traumas, but we also have the proactiveness of a coach, where we're all about being the best you can be and unlocking your ultimate potential. And so I love that you actually just went there with your kind of stand for coaching, but the appreciation of the therapy as well, because you're right, to be honest, the coaching industry is notoriously unregulated, but because of that, it gives us the bandwidth to do more, because particularly in America, it's a litigious society, as we're seeing with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case, but it is that kind of ability for them not to work outside their scope of practice. And counselors are trained not to say anything, whereas like we say stuff to our clients. My coach tells me what to do at times. And sometimes I need that, that is the loving parent that I never had, give me the direction.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. They all have their place. So, and that was just my experience. It was my life-changing moment and a life-changing relationship, that coaching container, for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Awesome. Talk to me about dating apps, Megan. Give me your 2 cents on the app society, because and just to say this, I'm doing the opposite to what people do. I just don't date. I find it so I'm saving myself toxic relationships by actively not dating. Now that has its own little world of trauma underneath it, which is that's my world. But one of the reasons why I don't do it is because I find those dating apps to be cesspools of horrendous experiences. But I would be very interested in your expert opinion.
Yes. I love that. And trust me, Victoria, I've just gotten off the end of that pendulum swing of I'm dating and I'm the just quintessential relationship hopper of next one, jumping in one relationship to the next to, okay, I'm taking a big break and I'm never dating again.
ever again.
Really long time. Yeah. So I'm okay, let's work our way back up to the middle here a little bit. So here's my thoughts on dating apps in general. So first of all, even let's say a year ago, thinking about dating apps, I was like, it sounds terrible. There are horrific people on there. They're looking for one thing. It's awful. I hate it. Okay. And then through some of my healing and taking time away from dating, I got to this new place. So this is where I stand now with dating apps. And this is my new belief. Mm-hmm. My belief is that if I am opening the doors to calling in my person, my king, my man, whatever you want to say, if I'm opening these doors, then I'm going to open all avenues for that. I'm not going to shut any door where he wants to come in. So if he wants to come in through a dating app, I'm going to open that door and just see what happens. And here's the other thing I had to decide, because you know what I say, if I exist, he exists. Okay. So it's if I'm on there, he could be on there, and I'm only available for good men on this app. Now, does that mean that some jackass can't slide in and say something inappropriate or annoying or whatever? Of course, that can happen. Yes. But I also changed how I was showing up on the dating app, because old me was these people suck. Oh, but he's really hot. Swipe right, or whichever way it is, So now it's I use language on dating apps that would repel a man that has intentions that I don't want. I say things like, I am looking for my king and I am ready to step into this. And I am, I'm a junkie on personal growth, just all these things, because my view is a dating app isn't a social media post where I'm trying to get all these likes or get attention or whatever. I don't even think we should be like that in social media, but I'm using that as an example. This isn't a popularity contest. I'm looking for one. I'm looking for one So I'm not trying to be the crowd pleaser and say the cute thing or like look as hot as I can in a photo because it's not a popularity contest. I'm looking for one. I'm looking for the one. So I've changed the way I show up on there. And I've also changed the way I select on there. So like, no offense, guys that are listening, but like if you have a dating app and it says something like, you know, there's prompts, like I'm on Hinge, I've been on Hinge. And there's prompts that you answer. And one of it's like, I'm a regular at, and if it's like the gym, I'm like, nope, because you've got to have, and I want like, yes, of course, a man that works out, that's great. But can you have a little depth? Can you have a little something on there that tells me like your intentions behind this? And it's not just for you to, you know, get a date or get something else. Yeah. So that's my stand on dating apps.
I love it because, and it brings me back to what you said, like much earlier in the podcast, you were talking about how empowered you feel now, and authentic empowerment is different than I'm just gonna, you know, throw my weight around and I'm a badass. And what I see is you now, because of the work you've done, have the ability to take that empowerment into any environment, whether it be a dating app or an online, you know, eHarmony, really deep kind of stuff, or, you know, meeting someone out at an amusement park, who knows? And wherever you go, because you are standing in your authenticity, it's going to attract someone who is also standing in their authenticity, because they're going to almost like pheromones, they're going to pick that up off of you. And it's just you being you. You don't have to do anything else other than be your badass self. And all of a sudden, badassness comes and finds you. Wow. How easy. You didn't even have to work hard at it. You just were like, I'm just going to be who I know that I am. And then it just comes. I love it. I just wanted to acknowledge that. It's really cool. And it's very much apparent in how you're carrying yourself and what you are imparting into your own clients and to your courses and so on. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
And it's great again, because that was a you process. It isn't, oh, I'm going to like judge everybody else on these dating apps. It was, I'm going to use this differently. And I think that's the interesting thing, again, to your comment on social media as well. Just because these are set up by the powers that be to be dopamine hit related, like seeking this kind of like brightly colored, bright, shiny thing, it doesn't mean that's the way you have to interact with them. Doesn't mean that's the way you have to play the game, particularly when you're in these kind of apps. I mean, I didn't like who I turned into. I became very, like you were saying, super judgmental. He's fit, he's not. It's just like, well, that's not how I would walk through a room. And my ex used to say that these were just like being in really big rooms of people. And if that's what it's like, well, you wouldn't walk through a room going, I'm a regular at the gym. You would bring your best self and you would be authentic, because if you're not, you're attracting the wrong person anyway. So I think that's a really good point in terms of how to use them. But anyone listening, you now know that Megan is available and on Hinge. So do your thing, people, because if
yes.
you have to tell her that you found her and discovered her on the Unveil podcast, because I feel like it should be like a subtle ulterior motive that we need to get people together, Brace, including myself with my king.
I love it. I love it. See, Brilliant. Maybe he'll find me on this podcast. I'm not closing any doors. It's all available.
All the doors.
The universe uses all its tricks of the trade. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Yeah. Yes.
Well, and speaking of this empowerment, I really want you to take us into your End Toxic Dating course, because you are giving this gift of personal empowerment to other women. So why don't you explain a little bit what this course looks like, when it's open, just give us all the details if we're thinking, oh my God, I need this in my life.
Yes, I'd love to. This is, again, so this course just came to me. I knew that I wanted to offer something to women, to reach more women, but I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't want to just do something to do it. So I was sort of waiting, in a sense, for this to fall into my lap, and it did. It just dropped right in. It was when I was with my family. I think it was over Christmas, and we were having that discussion around like, man, Maggie, they were like, we really think that you've broke this pattern. I was like, I really feel like I have. And we were just kind of reflecting on my journey and that sort of thing. And then right then and there, it's like the course came to me sort of backwards. So what it is, it's a 3-week course, and I take women through like a 3-step transformational process. So it's remembering, releasing, and reclaiming. Because I wanted to look at, what did I actually do? It's like, if I got this far to the end of the road, what did I actually do? And what processes did I go through in order to, what I feel like, really break up with this pattern? And I can't keep it to myself, right? Like, it's not just for me. So because I know my belief is, whatever we go through in life, it's like we could be going through that to help somebody else with it eventually, right? So it's not lost on us. So it came through to me, and so I was excited about it, and I didn't know yet how I wanted to put it out there in the world. And then Valentine's Day rolled around 2 months later, and I wanted to give women something that they could feel excited about on Valentine's Day if they were single. Because so many of my single friends were like, "Oh, Valentine's Day, right? I hate Valentine's Day." And I was like, what if this was like the best freaking Valentine's Day ever? And you just celebrated the shit out of you and what you're calling in and who you get to be and what you get to be excited about. Because I think so often we think that our desires, are too far-fetched, or right, like, we're not going to find anything like that, or it's too much. We're just too much. We're asking for too much. And I think it's bullshit. I think the desires of our heart were put there for a reason. And it's not like this fleeting thing. It's like, it was imprinted on our heart from day one, and we get to have those things. So that's what I'm teaching women in my course.
And did you hear that, people? 3 weeks. Spend 3 weeks with Megan, and you get to experience this kind of vibration that she's giving out right now, which is, it's powerful to sit opposite. I kind of wish we were all in the same room, because what we should say is that we've never actually met Megan in person. All of our interactions have been digital in nature. And it's so palpable to see this and to feel this. And it's not domineering. It's not that classic masculine feminine. It's not this kind of, I deserve this. It's very much, I get this. I get to experience this. And it feels very much like you have found your zone of genius within all of this. So practically speaking, you say it's 3 weeks. What does that look like for people who are thinking, I don't have 3 weeks in my life? What does it look like? What's the dates? When is this all happening?
Yes. So we're going to start this live course May 15th. So it's 3 Sundays in a row. It's May 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. We meet over Zoom for an hour to an hour and a half, because I want to leave room. So I will do a teaching, and we'll go through the 3 steps. Each class is on one of the steps. And so there's a teaching, there's processes, there's even some meditations in there. And then I leave time for Q&A and one-on-one coaching at the end. And then everybody gets homework and journal prompts and stuff to do in between the calls. If you can't make a live call, you have access to all the recordings forever. And even though this probably isn't the best business thing, there are things that I might be adding to the course over time. And once you're in, you're in. So any updates I add, you get them. So that's what it looks like.
And another reason why Megan is our first guest, because this is very much how we run everything that we do at Unveil. We are very kind of, we don't hold on to our wisdom. I love what you just shared about, if you go through something, it doesn't end with you. It doesn't stop. You've been through hell and that's it. You've been through hell for a reason, and you get to be the healer for other people within that dynamic. And it's super clear that you're really able to guide women through this kind of process. So May 15th, that starts. We will put all the links that you need to do this in the show notes, so you can go dig in, find it all out, put the calls in your diary, sign up, spend a few weeks with Megan, and get your kind of journey through this. You also do one-to-one coaching as well, obviously. You work one-to-one. Great.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
And what does that look like to work with you? Do you like set containers? Is it packages? What does that give us an idea if people are like, no, I just need to have her in my life and spend time with this woman?
I love it. Yes. So I typically work with women for 3 months or 6 months. And it's weekly calls. I know a lot of coaches do 2 weeks, and I think that's fabulous too. For me, what I'm doing right now is still weekly. So it's 3 months for 6 months, weekly calls. And again, I always, of course, give stuff in between those calls. I never want to overwhelm my client, but I mean, a part of this work, there's so much magic that happens in between the calls. You know, there's so much that is integrated and that shows up. And, you know, I have clients that have breakthroughs in the calls, and then they have breakthroughs really in between the calls too. So that's how I do it.
Yeah. And we always like to, we do weekly calls as well. We find very much that intimacy really works, but also it's, the magic of the universe and what it does when you sign up to be in one of these coaching containers with someone who can hold that space and hold the whole process is insane. It's like, I will have clients go through the most crazy things that were never like predicted at the start of so much so that I've had to start putting that in my kind of paperwork now. It's like, by the way, stuff is gonna go on. So like, just to like set the vibration that like, I can't be in control of the whole thing. The universe has a lot to do with it.
Yes, that's so good. I want to add that to my contract.
P.S.
Miracles may happen.
Completely opposite ends, but same, you know?
Same, yeah. Shit and miracles. It all happens.
We had a phrase in one of our podcasts where you have to go through the goo. I don't know where we came up with it, but it was just like, that has to happen because it's just necessary. But but everyone, I really love what Megan shared about, if you are here, that other person is here. I think it's really easy to lose hope. I think it's really easy to feel like, you know, there's 7 billion people on this planet. How the hell am I going to find my one? What Megan's been explaining to us today is vibrational resonance through the doorways of dating apps, through the kind of medium of this podcast, which is basically going to turn into a dating app in and of itself. This is my dream. But through you following your drive and inspiration, because you've moved house recently, haven't you, as well? You kind of like, but by following that train, you are putting yourself in front of the potentials at every single moment. And it's, maybe you need to do a 3-week course or work with Megan to shift yourself into that place where you can be that person. But rest assured, you can be that person, and it's not too late. You know, neither Megan nor I are the youngest people in the room, like ever. We're not spring chickens, like setting out. But there is always that time. There's that time left that we get to have. So awesome.
Yes, 100%. And we're never, ever too late. I think we're always on time. And I will say this too, just to sort of, really just put my stuff out there. But there was a time in my life when I was dating, again, sort of from this place of lack or deficiency in so many ways, because I was wanting a man who was on purpose, who was making good money, who was like, you know, this and this and this, like, you know, the checklist, right? And then when I turn the mirror around, it's like, well, girl, are you doing that? And I'm not saying that you've both got to be financially successful to find each other. You both have to be doing this. It's not always that. But there was this part of me that was, it was my sneaky way of putting myself on hold and my life on hold so that I didn't have to really go in on what I wanted in the world and what I wanted to do in the world. I was just like, well, I'll wait for him to do it. So in so many ways, I was asking for something that I wasn't, or that I wasn't embodying within myself. And again, it doesn't have to be like apples to apples, you know, but right. Like you said, I took the leap. I quit my 9-to-5 job. I moved to a different state to go full time in my business, which I literally never thought I could do in a million years. I mean, there's no one in my family like this. This is sort of like unheard of. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean anyone listening has to quit their 9-to-5 job either, but it's like, where in your life are you not living in alignment with the truth of who you are and what it is you really want? And how are you looking for that in someone else in order to feel complete?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give our listeners a bit of context as well, all of those changes that Megan's made are recent. I remember our first conversation, Megan. I actually did your human design with you.
Yes.
And you were still in your job. You were still in that kind of like, I know I need to break out of it. And you were kind of doing it from that calculated perspective of, okay, so how much does there need to be in the bank and how much and this and that and the other. And then like the next minute I like looked on your social media and you've left and you've moved. And it wasn't that you hated your job. You were actually very good at it.
No, I loved my job
and loved the place and all that kind of stuff. But it just was like, it wasn't the vehicle through which you could truly show up and shine. And choosing yourself means choosing those pivotal moments where you get to go, okay, this isn't a mental calculation game. This has to be putting myself absolutely front and center and first. And the doorways will open for you then. I mean, it takes effort. I'm not saying that Megan's relocation.
No, it's yeah, piece of cake. But no, but you're right. And even when we compare it to like, okay, how long did it really take you to heal from that toxic relationship? But that toxic relationship that felt like it took 2 years roughly was the relationship itself, and then my own wounding that needed some real love and attention from, from me as a little girl. So there's that. And then me taking this leap. Yeah, I quit my job. I mean, I officially left my job in February. And what are we now? It's the 1st of May. So, I mean, it was, and I gave my notice in December. So yes, and then you were on like almost
national television, like 2 weeks later or something ridiculous.
It was exactly. And that's the story that I love to tell people, because I was waiting again, same theme. I was waiting for the safety net before I left, waiting for the man to put the ring on my finger before I financially went for myself or quit my job. And then I just was like, there's no more waiting. There's no more waiting. I get to choose this now. I get to choose it for me. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know when I invest and go all in on what is true to my heart, it has to work out. That's my belief now. It just has to. So I took the leap of faith. 1 week after that, I got the biggest client since to that point. And then I was asked to go on NBC Texas Today for my Intoxic Dating course. It was like, what? Hold on. What? It's like not a moment before though, right? Not one moment before did these magic miracles, these opportunities happen. It was when I finally said yes. I energetically and actually opted in. And then it was like, oh, great. Here you go. Here's everything you've been asking for. So.
And if we've made that sound really fantastical and you're like, oh yeah, but that'll never happen for me, we've given you a really easy layup to say yes within this conversation. It's a 3-week course. You can start with Megan in a couple of weeks' time, and you can do it now. You don't need to wait. You don't need to think on this any longer. You can just join Megan for her course this time around, and see where it takes you. Just put one foot in front. That's all we ever need to do. Put one foot in front of the other. And yes, some of those footsteps are going to be huge leaps, and some of them are just going to be incremental steps forward. But as long as you're committed to yourself, that's kind of all we're here to do in this life, right?
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. So good. So good.
Oh, Megan, I've loved chatting to you.
Me too. This is awesome. You guys are amazing.
It's brilliant.
We love having great people in our world. We know a lot of really great people, and it's such a privilege to have you as our first guest and to walk through this little interview with you and to just really hear somebody so on purpose. It's so inspiring. It doesn't matter if you were talking about, bin bags. It doesn't, you're just so on purpose that it's really, really enlivening. And I hope all of our listeners have got all of the things they need. And everything that you've mentioned will be in the show notes. Just quickly, point of order, how long do we have left in this trial? Just so I know how long we need to be focusing on.
We're on week 3, and it's set to go for 6 weeks. But they're getting through Johnny's witnesses pretty fast. He's got 4 more, I want to say. I don't know what's going on right now, maybe 3 or 4 more. And then Amber Heard's going to take the stand, which, get your popcorn ready. This is going to be even wait. I had a friend say, I'm so glad that I quit my job so I wouldn't have to take off work for this.
And if you do have a 9 to 5, someone's social media will keep you up to date on all the things. So just follow Megan, and we'll put her social media links and all that kind of stuff that you need.
Like the highlight reel.
Right, the highlight reel. And also the humor involved, the amount, I don't know how you've done, and if, I don't know if they're still on your social media, but you photoshopping Johnny Depp into literally everything is totally amazing.
Thank you. I'm telling you, I'm having way too much fun. I know.
So real. I was like, oh my God, she was with, and I had that whole moment of like, oh, that's why she's on Johnny Depp's side. She met him. And then I was like, oh no, she didn't. No, that was just
but he needs my course. He really needed my course. God bless him. But yeah. But he's
Bryce and I have a whole concept that we're going to do reels on social media of like, if fill in the blank celebrity had a coach. And like, I feel like that there's a lot of mileage if Johnny Depp had a coach thing, if Amber Heard had a coach.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's brilliant. I love that.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Megan. We have really appreciated it. And if you have been inspired, all the links you need are in the show notes. Join Megan. It is not a difficult decision to do, and just have the experience of some of this empowerment for yourself.
Yay. Thank you, guys.
Stay informed with all things Unveil. Sign up for the newsletter at unveilenterprises.com/sign up.